Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fridley City Council meeting. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first order of business is a proclamations, a couple of appreciation days, and I'll come up to the podium and present these. And ladies first. This is an appreciation day for Dolores Faircheck.
She's got to come down there.
Well, yeah.
Well, she
Yeah.
can come down and
Come on.
speak or talk there.
You know,
Come on.
Dolores, it didn't matter what I figured. They kind of direct things.
It takes a good mayor to know that.
Dolores, it certainly is an honor and a privilege to present this to you today. And for the audience, I'd like to read it in its entirety. Whereas Dolores Faircheck has served the citizens of the city of Fridley for the past 12 years as council member of Ward 2. And whereas prior to becoming a city council member, Dolores Faircheck was a member of the Fridley Parks and Recreation Commission from September 2003 through December 2006. And whereas during her tenure on the city council, Dolores Faircheck was a member of the Anoka County Fire Protection Council and also was a representative on Metro Cities. And whereas Dolores Faircheck has made many contributions to the physical, social, and economic development of the city of Fridley. And whereas Dolores Faircheck's commitment, dedication, and hard work have enhanced the quality of life in the city of Fridley. And whereas Dolores Faircheck leaves public office with a reputation for leadership, honesty, integrity, and commitment to the residents and businesses of the city of Fridley. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Scott Lund, Mayor of the city of Fridley, do hereby proclaim Monday, December 31st, 2018 as Dolores Faircheck Day.
Thank you, Sam.
Dolores, congratulations. Thank you for all your work and your service. Thank you. The podium's yours.
I just have a couple of brief comments here. Mr. Mayor, council members, and of course the city staff. Since this is my last meeting, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for a 12-year experience I'll never forget. Together, the council has made decisions for the betterment of the community, and I'm proud of our accomplishments. I want to express my thanks to the constituents in Ward 2, where I served. I'm confident the newly elected official, Steve Eggert, will take the responsibility just as seriously as I did. I will miss all of this and will continue to keep an eye on the city of Fridley. Lastly, a special thanks to my husband, Stephen, and my family, relatives, and friends who have supported me over the past 12 years. It has been an honor to serve the city of Fridley. Thank you.
Mr. Safety, if you want to come down and join me, please. There you go, Jim. So for the audience and for you, I'd like to certainly recognize you and read this in its entirety. Whereas Jim Safety has served the citizens of the city of Fridley for the past 12 years as council member of Ward 1. And whereas prior to becoming a city council member, Jim Safety was a paid on-call firefighter and a city of Fridley employee for over 33 years and retired from city employment as water supervisor in the Public Works Department. And whereas during his tenure on the city council, Jim Safety was a commissioner and vice chair on the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization. And whereas Jim Safety has made many contributions to the physical, social, and economic development of the city of Fridley, and whereas Jim Safety's commitment, dedication, and hard work have enhanced the quality of life in the city of Fridley, and whereas Jim Safety leaves public office with a reputation for leadership, honesty, integrity, and commitment to the residents and businesses of the city of Fridley. Now therefore be resolved that I, Scott Lund, the mayor of the city of Fridley, do hereby proclaim Monday, December 31st, 2018 as Gym Safety Appreciation Day. So you get to share that day with Dolores, and I'm not sure if it was December 31st, so you could just party on for New Year's Eve or what, so, but congratulations. And Jim, I should have mentioned to everybody to shut off their phone, right?
Yeah, you should, including me.
Here you go. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't have a prepared speech like Dolores did. Although I have to admit that it's been a real pleasure because all of the staff here at the city and our leadership and our council, you couldn't ask for a better group. I mean, even our secretary over there, you know. I have to thank people in Ward 1, first of all, for voting for me a couple of times, and for being so kind and understanding when it came to other kinds of problems. And I have to admit, I didn't really run into a whole lot of problems. And I guess that reflects on the people that are in Fridley. Everybody's proud. And with that, that's it. Thank you.
And you wanted to mention that you had fun working with the mayor.
Oh, that too. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was you picked December 31st because it's New Year's Eve. So every New Year's Eve, we can celebrate again.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Ah,
Party
very
on.
good.
For this? Yeah. Do the council have any comments they wish to make to their, at our council members and their last official duty?
I think for me, it's been a great pleasure working with both Dolores and Jim. We're gonna miss your honesty and integrity and all your work, and we're gonna miss you, but we know that you're on to new and better, maybe different, not better, adventures in life, so good luck, and you can always come back and sit in the audience and come up during open forum.
Well, I'd like to say the same thing to both Jim and Dolores, that it's been a pleasure and very much enjoyed it, and I think you did a heck of a good job representing the city of Fridley, and that's what's important.
And I concur.
Thank you.
I think you've done a great job, and it's been an honor and a privilege to sit at this dais with you two for 12 years. And we can only hope that the incoming council members will do a good a job, right?
Absolutely.
So, great. Well, enjoy it. We're gonna pull an all-nighter tonight, so you. Okay, and moving on, and as I briefly mentioned, if you have cell phones, please turn them down so that, or put them on vibrate so that we don't disturb the proceedings. Okay. So the first item on tonight's agenda is the usual proposed consent agenda business, and our city manager will give us an overview.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll wait for it to come up, and there we go. The first item on our consent agenda is the resolution approving a final plat. And this is for industrial equities at 5601 East River Road and ABCFGS Holdings, LLC, of 5851 East River Road. And this allows for the potential of the 57th Avenue extension. And with that resolution, also one approving a registered land survey with both owners for certain land to be deeded to the city as right-of-way. We have a resolution approving a statutory level of tort limits. This is an annual resolution that comes before the council. We have a resolution approving the 2018 gifts, donations, and sponsorships to the city of Fridley. This also is an annual resolution. Resolution approving plans and authorizing call for bids for the Lock Park Water Treatment Plant Improvement Project 17-509. We have approval of a lease termination agreement with North Suburban Hospital District. And also approval of a sidewalk easement with Unity Hospital. Appointment of Dave Ostwald to the Housing Redevelopment Authority effective upon the swearing in as an HRA Commissioner, Steve Eggert, to the City Council. That swearing in will take place on January 7th. And then we have claims, and that is our consent agenda for the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Weissalp. Is there any of the council members wish to remove one or more of these proposed consent agenda items for further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to remove anything, but on page 19, as I asked before the meeting, the termination agreement, the last sentence, this agreement came to us without that last sentence in there, so we're not sure. But it doesn't really reflect the lease, the termination of the lease agreement, but it's just part of the record, so.
Sure.
Just so it's in the minutes of the meeting.
So that the final sentence on page 19 is
19.
included in the minutes. Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any persons in the audience that wish to address the council on one of these proposed consent agenda items?
If none, with the correction by Ms. Balcom, I would move the consent of the proposed consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. I sent you ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries. Which leads us to open forum. Are there persons in the audience that wish to address the council on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll move on. Adoption of tonight's agenda would be in order.
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries. Under new business, item number 9, a resolution certifying final tax requirements to the county of Anoka.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before I begin my presentation, I would just suggest is that a little better? Can you hear me?
Oh,
There, now it came on.
Okay. My presentation will provide an overview of items 9 and 10, the property tax levy and the proposed 2019 budget, revised budget, and the CIP. So after the presentation, I would recommend that the council consider action on both of those items.
Thank you.
So with that, as I mentioned, I will just touch on the proposed 2019 budget and then just a few slides on the property tax levy, and then I will close my presentation with just some next steps. So this information is also included in the memo that was distributed to the council prior to the meeting. But since our meeting on November 26th, there have been a handful of significant revisions to the budget as presented. Just in summary, there was a $500,000 shift in the Lock Park Water Treatment Rehabilitation Project. It was originally budgeted for $3.8 million in 2019, and now $3.3 is being budgeted for 2019, and then $500,000 in 2020. A decrease in the traffic signal maintenance project of $425,000. That reflects an agreement that the council approved with Anoka County to have them pick up a larger than previously anticipated portion of that project, so there's a corresponding decrease. The addition of a $230,000 street sweeper project. And then we made some revisions to the carryover for the Westmore Lake Drive Trail project, which resulted in an increase of about $120,000 for the 2019 budget. But it's important to note that the overall cost of the project has not changed. It just reflects how much money is going to be spent in 18 versus 19. And then with the additional street improvement projects, there was an increase in the transfer from that fund to the general fund of about $6,600. Those monies are used to offset staff costs and other overhead costs associated with executing those projects. I would just add that in total, the changes are actually a decrease to the budget of about $568,000 for fiscal year 2019, although it is important to stress that some costs have shifted into other years. So. But just generally, that is the overview. And this slide just represents kind of total consolidated revenues. We've gone through the budget in previous meetings in some great detail, but just as way of summary, just to call your attention to the overall budget. And as discussed in the memorandum, it will be just right under $50 million for revenues. The 2017, the big slide there, that is the receipt of the bond proceeds for the Civic Campus. So that's why you see the spike in revenues for that year. And then overall expenditures, again, just under $50 million. There is about a difference of about $1,135,000 after transfers and depreciation and some other items. And as we discussed at previous meetings, those will be picked up by fund balance, mainly in the capital project funds. And then just moving briefly into the proposed 2019 property tax levy, just as a reminder that the city is required to certify a proposed and a final levy. We've done the proposed levy earlier this year on September 24th, and then we have to certify the final levy, which is item number 9 this evening, and we certify that to the county per statute 5 days after December 20th of each year. And then, as is always mentioned, that final levy cannot exceed the proposed levy except for certain items that are outlined in state law. This slide just provides a brief history of the property tax levy. As you can see, as bolded in the total column at this point in time, the recommendation in the proposed budget is for a 4.64% increase overall in the property tax levy. That reflects a slight decrease in the debt service levy, and then a 6.5% increase in the 3 non-debt service levies. And then just as reference, the increase last year was 4.86%. And you've seen this slide a few times in the past, but I always think it's just important to call your attention to the effect on residential homesteads. And so as we have anticipated with the increased value, we are assuming about $860, excuse me, of city taxes on a home valued at just under $203,000. That would be a 4.6% increase, or about $38. And then, as I like to mention, about $83 of that change is actually attributable to the increase in valuation. And then, just as a reminder to the residential homestead property owners, the state does provide 2 different property tax credit refunds, one for the regular homestead, which is a means tested, or meaning they take into account the income that the household has in terms of the refund, and the other is a special homestead credit, which accounts for larger than anticipated year-over-year changes. If you're interested in either of these programs, you can always reach out to the Minnesota Department of Revenue. If you'd like any assistance with those as well, city staff can also provide that. And so what's next? As presented this evening, staff is recommending the City Council adopt the 2019 budget, the 2019 and 2023 capital investment program, the property tax levies as presented, and then also a revised 2018 budget. And then, as you see below there, as I mentioned in a previous slide, assuming the council moves these items, we will certify to the county by the end of the week. So based on the process to date, staff is recommending 2 actions. First, a resolution certifying the property tax levy requirements to Anoka County. That's on page 43 of your agenda packet. And then adoption of the various budget documents. That resolution is included on page 46. And the one thing I would like to call the council's attention to is that section 7.0201 does require an affirmative vote, at least 4 members of the city council, for any property tax levy change that exceeds 5%. And as mentioned on a previous slide, for 3 of the 4 property tax levies, there is a recommended increase of 6.5%. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have about any of the budget sections or the various property tax levies.
Thank you, Mr. Dinter. The council have questions? Mr. Dinter, do you recall offhand when you talked about the special tax cut, is that when somebody has a very unusually high year of taxation, property taxes, and do you remember what that threshold is? Is it like 9 or 10%?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, yes, you are correct. It is to reflect a larger than anticipated increase in property taxes. And if memory serves, it's a 12% increase, or $200.
Okay.
So there is a threshold.
Okay, thank you. Council have questions? Anybody in the audience? Okay, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move a resolution certifying final tax levy requirements for 2019 to the County of Anoka, found on page 43.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Item number 10, also we just talked, had a presentation on. Is there a motion
Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move a resolution adopting a budget for the year 2019, a revised budget for the year 2018, and the 2019 to 2023 capital investment program found on page 46.
Second?
Motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. New business, item number 11, a resolution approving the 2440 comprehensive plan for the city of Fridley and authorizing staff to distribute.
Okay. There it goes. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is the council's last view of the 2040 comprehensive plan before we submit it to the Metropolitan Council. Still a work in progress, as it always seems to be. And as you are aware, we reviewed this in your work session last week, there are basically 10 components to the comprehensive plan, and these components are guided, of course, by the Metropolitan Council. The one thing I would note is that the water supply section and the local water management section are actually plans separate on their own. The water supply plan being one that the council actually approved already in 2016, but we've incorporated them into our comprehensive plan. And so you might find that they look a little different, and that's because there's separate guidelines for those from other agencies besides just the Metropolitan Council. We've gone through a 3-year-long development process to develop the comprehensive plan, which started back in 2016. We've gathered data and input from the public. We've analyzed that data and the city's needs and trends that are happening in the marketplace. And we followed a format that Metropolitan Council provided for us online, which made it a lot easier, I think, this time than 10 years ago in developing the plan. And so staff committees were developed to draft those draft chapters based on the data that was gathered in the format that was required by the Met Council, and obtain feedback throughout the process on the draft chapters from our advisory commissions, our volunteers in the community. We have a lot of thanks here to give tonight too to the Park and Rec Commission, the Environmental Quality and Energy Commission, the Planning Commission, the Housing Redevelopment Authority. We had several groups involved in providing feedback on this. And then we held a public hearing before the Planning Commission about a year ago. And then the City Council reviewed it last March, and those chapters in that format that the City Council approved was submitted to 23 surrounding jurisdictions that had the opportunity to review and provide feedback to us. And that all was due, they had 6 months to do that, so that was due this past October, and since then staff has incorporated that feedback from those agencies into the copy now that's before you for the final review. There are some key features to the plan that I would like to point out, probably more for our viewing public than for the City Council, because you've had an opportunity to look at this. But one of them is our future land use map, which is on page 29 of the plan. A lot of people are always curious about what's predicted to change. We're a fully developed community. There can't be that much that's predicted to change, but we do have some land that we are guiding in this plan to change as far as land use. We also have 21 potential redevelopment areas that are found on a map on page 30 of the plan, another thing that people seem to be interested in most. We have traffic congestion forecasts on page 106 in the transportation chapter that may be of interest to folks. And just mentioned in one of your previous items, we are still guiding in the plan pursuing a Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad bridge overpass at 57th Avenue, which is mentioned in an action step on page 108 of the transportation plan. We also have a map on page 124 in the transportation plan of priority trail connections, and that's something that we will be updating here soon as we are starting to work on updating the active transportation plan for the city. There is a massive list of stormwater management projects that begin on page 271. 99 of them, as a matter of fact, that is a 10-year plan. for those items. And then there's a bluff impact zone map on page 313, which might be of interest to people that live along the river or on one of the creeks in the community. And then the action steps, the real to-do list of the comprehensive plan begins on page 335, not just about our public facilities, but about all of these topics that are in the comprehensive plan. As far as zoning noted, I thought I would note some of the sites of those 21 potential redevelopment areas that are noted in the plan. There are 8 of them that are actually guided to change in zoning that I wanted to point out. One of them that the public's asked about probably the most is the Girl Scout camp, which is currently zoned institutional, which I should mention, that's a new zoning that we created as updating the comprehensive plan to satisfy some of the requirements that Metropolitan Council had wanted us to change in our zoning. And so that's slated to change from institutional to residential zoning. The Holly Center site, which was in our 2030 comprehensive plan for redevelopment, is guided for mixed use, as well as the old City Hall site in the Cummins office building there as well. Also guided as mixed use is an area around Osborne Avenue, including the Bob's Produce site and the building that Mike's Foods is in. Then on the southwest corner of Osborne and Highway 65, there's an area there slated for redevelopment that is also guided for mixed use. And then the southeast corner of Mississippi in Old Central, that's a site that we've had a lot of development proposals over the years on, is guided for mixed use. And then there's a section of single-family properties in the northeast end of Moore Lake, where there's some very deep, large, single-family lots that are guided in the plan for multifamily development for potential for townhomes or condominiums. And then lastly, the northeast, I won't say corner, but there's a section kind of northeast of the intersection of 694 and University Avenue that was guided in our comprehensive plan 10 years ago for multifamily development that continues to be guided for that. Many of those properties in that area are zoned multifamily now. What's unique in this plan that wasn't in our plan 10 years ago is that mixed-use zoning classification. We did not have that zoning classification before. We also have attention to care for our urban forest in this plan because we're a Tree City USA now, and that there's, of course, all the impacts of the emerald ash borer infestations that is causing us to pay more attention to our urban forest. We noted concerns over food security because there's very few neighborhoods, areas in the city where people can actually walk to get fresh food. So that's something that's kind of a new hot topic in the planning world these days. We are mentioning native landscaping, pollinator-friendly planting areas in the plan, something new from 10 years ago too that we're focusing on. And then with the council's recent adoption of the Energy Action Plan, we incorporated that into the comprehensive plan, as well as emphasis on solar, access to solar. That was a requirement placed on us by Metropolitan Council to include in the plan. And Fridley is still, at this time, it's under renewed study by Metro Transit, but we are still planned to have a bus rapid transit line coming through Fridley, and so we have things in the plan related to that potential transit addition to the community. There is a definite focus on bike and pedestrian access and safety in the plan, more so than we had 10 years ago. We also have an alternative transportation node in National Park Service maps that we incorporated into this. And of course, we have safe routes to schools plans that the city and the school districts have adopted that are incorporated into the plan. There was a Highway 65 intersection study that was recently done by Metro Transit and MnDOT that's mentioned in the plan and could potentially have some intersection impacts to the city in the future. And then, of course, just last week you heard from MnDOT about the University Avenue audit, and that is part of kind of a larger a focus we have in the plan of focusing on University Avenue and the safety needs of University Avenue. There is mention of creating a parks master plan to guide development and redevelopment of our parks in the plan. That is something new. And we have a whole new chapter called economic competitiveness that we did not have before. And not that those efforts are necessarily new. The city, and particularly the Housing Redevelopment Authority, has been working diligently to support our businesses over the years, but we have a whole new section about that now. We have new rules from the DNR for the critical area. That's the part of the city between East River Road and the river. So it affects a lot of property in the city. And then, of course, we have this new campus and the action steps in the plan related to that in the plan. The implementation plan is the last chapter, and that is what I refer to as the to-do list. 10 years ago, we had 59 action steps. In this plan, we have over 200. So we have a very, very aggressive to-do list before staff here in the plan, but we think we've been quite thorough in trying to address all of these topics and think through the needs of those topic areas. The process from here is for the City Council to adopt the resolution that's on page 49 and 50 in your council packet tonight that will direct staff to submit this draft plan to the Metropolitan Council. That is due, of course, by the end of this month. Seemed like it was so long ago, 3 years ago, but here it is before us now very quickly. And the Metropolitan Council gets 6 months to review the plan, so I would not expect to see your final draft back until next summer. Last time it happened in July, so that's what I'm anticipating again. So we've put the plan in a 3-ring binder for you as a guide for the next few months for budgeting and for policy decisions. We'll hope that we only have to maybe insert a few new pages in that for you when it gets back from council, but if it's more than that, we'll recopy the whole 300 and something pages for you. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. When you spoke briefly about food security and, about the walkability, access to fresh produce, like at farmers markets and things, but what's the security portion of it?
Well, that's a term that's in the planning world, Mayor, that the planners use at the conferences and that, but it means, can you safely get to fresh food and be
So
healthy and live healthy?
it's not so much about the food itself than the safety of the food
Yeah.
that's being presented, it's about getting to the,
It's more about getting safely to that food
All right.
source. If you don't have a car, how are you gonna get there safely? So that's what we look at.
council have any questions of Ms. Jones?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Weisel, at our last conference meeting, could you expound on how much how much work has been done by the staff, and that a lot of other cities might have hired someone, but we had some great expertise amongst our city staff here?
Councilmember Bolcom, I'm going to defer this to Scott Hickok because he's got a lot more detail. It is an enormous amount of work that went into it, but I know Scott would like to say a few words about that.
Thank you, Manager Weisopel, Mr. Mayor, council members. I would like to say that I really want to recognize Julie Jones and her efforts in this. A document like this takes, no doubt, 3 years. In the planning world, you have your short-range planning, or the action items that come before you on a regular basis for land use action. And then you have the long-range planning that really looks out 20, 30 years. And I have to say that this comes with an enormous amount of effort and an enormous amount of focus. And Julie has proven this really is a compilation of 30 years of planning activity that she has done now. Once again, completing a 10-year extension to the lookout that she did 10 years ago. And Manager Weisopel mentioned at our last meeting about how this can save a city $80,000 to $100,000 easily in consulting fees when staff can do this internally. And we had a lot going on, as you recall, over the course of these last 3 years. and there was a building project going on, and there was a lot of attention in a lot of different directions. And I have to say that it really took a consistent effort and a diligence to get the information. Our department heads played a very big role in this. The department heads did a phenomenal job of participating in the activities that were necessary, whether it was relative to the park chapter, whether it was relative to the stormwater management or our water utilities, and so in finance and our fiscal opportunities and where we expect to go in the future on some of our planning efforts and what those will do in terms of impact to the capital improvements plan and all of that. So much of this is woven together in this planning document, and I just want to thank our staff. I want to recognize Julie again for her leadership on it, and I want to say that this is probably one of the most beautiful and best valued documents that will be turned into the Met Council this year, and I know I'm biased about that. But when you take a look at it and spend some time with it, the words, the photographs, and the thought that goes into where we're going in Fridley, I think citizens should be very, very comfortable with the care that is here. And I would really encourage folks to take a look at the comprehensive plan. If you've never done it before, it's a great, great read. And if you only pick a chapter that you're interested in, you've learned a lot. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to speak on that, and thanks, Julie.
If I could, I'd like to second what Scott said. I said this is very, very impressive. I've got just a couple of questions. One that's always been on my mind, and I didn't see it specifically in here, but did we mention anything about the crossing over from here over to University to go south to encourage the Department of Transportation to get onto that? Is that in here?
May I clarify, Councilmember Burnett? I'm
Well,
not sure which
we've got the
intersection.
entrance out from the fire department to go north, and I would hope that we get an exit over to the university so the fire and police can go south on University.
Oh, okay. I would have to defer to someone else on that. I really haven't been involved in that.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
His question
relates-
is whether it's included in the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan
Oh,
for
if it's,
future plan.
if it's mentioned in here, it is not, because that's something that's fairly recently come up, so it is not mentioned in here
Okay,
as an action step.
okay, well, that's okay, we can work on
We
that.
have new
but-
things that come up every day.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the other question I had was, with regard to those 6 lots north of Moore Lake Beach on Old Central, I see where 3 of those are owned by the city. Are the other 3, are there homes that are being used on the other 3?
Mhm.
There are people still living
Yeah.
there?
Mhm.
And is the plan to eventually purchase those properties?
Mayor and Councilmember Barnett, to my knowledge, no, there's no immediate plans.
Okay.
It's just that if someone were wanting to develop something there, that's why we guided in the plan, so that it's kind of laid out ahead of time that that would be a permitted use.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, if I could make a comment, I know I've been given a lot of recognition here, but another person who deserves a lot of recognition for this comprehensive plan is Rachel Workin, who you're gonna hear from next. In my opinion, she wrote the 2 most difficult chapters of this, well, 3 actually most difficult chapters of this plan. The critical area, the local water plan, and the local water supply plan. She had a lot of work on those chapters, and those were hard ones, very technical, difficult to put together. So she deserves a lot of credit for the writing in the plan.
Well, I thank all 3 of you and your staff that have put a lot of work into this. I can't imagine the amount of hours that are in it, and I assume you haven't taken the time to calculate all those hours. But I'm certain that you're very happy to finally come to near fruition or completion of this project, because I know it's like a 3-year-long project, and it seems like you just get it done, and a few short years later, you're back at it again. So thank you for the cost savings that people don't even recognize what you've done to save us a vast amount of money in doing this in-house, and certainly people should make use of looking at it from time to time. So thank all 3 of you, and certainly you should, pat yourselves on the back, because nobody else will do it, okay? So, Okay, if there's no other comment,
Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move a resolution approving the 2040 comprehensive plan for the city of Fridley and authorizing staff to distribute to the Metropolitan Council found on pages 49 and 50.
Second?
we have a motion, we have a second. If there's no other discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion carries. Which leads us to item number 12, and that is a resolution to approve a contract for recycling services with Allied Waste. Ms. Workin.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm here tonight to present two items related to the city's residential recycling program. The first is for the curbside recycling collection contract with Allied Waste Services, which does business as Republic Services. To start off my presentation, I just wanted to go over some brief reasons on the importance of recycling. One foremost is the environmental benefit that is associated with recycling. It involves 90% less energy to make an aluminum can out of recycled materials as compared to virgin aluminum, 50% less energy to create a glass bottle using recycled glass as compared to virgin glass, and 75% less energy to make paper using recycled materials compared with virgin paper. There's also a huge economic benefit associated with recycling. In 2017, there was $690 million worth of material that was recycled. And this industry supported 37,000 jobs here in Minnesota. In addition to the environmental and economic benefits of recycling, you have to think of what would the alternative be? What would happen to all that material if it wasn't recycled? Great River Energy, which is currently where most of Anoka County's waste is sent to be converted from waste into energy, has announced its intentions to stop accepting material starting January 15th. So following that closure and their plans to distance themselves from this plant, most of Anoka County's waste will begin to be landfilled again. There is not very much landfill capacity left in the North Metro, and so industry representatives are looking at alternatives, which will likely involve construction of new landfills or shipping of material out of state. So recycling is an easy alternative to kind of shift that pressure off of our landfill system and our waste to energy plants. It's an easy thing that people can do every day to make a difference. The MPCA has set a goal for the metropolitan area to divert 60% of materials from landfills and waste to energy plants by 2030. We're currently at a 39% diversion rate, so there is room to go. The City of Fridley Code, Chapter 113, requires that the City of Fridley provide recycling services to residents in single dwelling units and multi-dwelling units up to 12 units. Residents in buildings of up to 12 units also must be provided, over 12 units also must be provided recycling. However, that's through a direct contract between their apartment manager and the recycling provider. Our current contract is with Allied Waste Services, which does business as Republic Services, and it includes biweekly collection from residential properties of up to 12 units. This contract began on May 1st, 2012, when the city began its single sort recycling system, and is set to expire on May 1st, 2019. As we anticipate that the time the contract was coming to an end, it was also a really dramatic year for recycling. You might have read about it in the news. It's been featured in a lot of different outlets. Previously, 30 to 40% of the United States recycling went to China. However, starting this year, China announced new regulation which banned certain materials, including the importation of mixed paper. And they also set a contamination standard of 0.5%. Which meant that they would no longer accept materials that had more than 0.5% of contamination. And the impact of this has been a big shift within the recycling markets. Material that previously went to China had to go other places. And as those markets received more material, it decreased prices. And as material recovery facilities attempted to meet this 0.5% contamination rate, they had to increase processing costs as they slowed down their lines to do a better job sorting. However, so far, there have been no applications for waivers to the MPCA, which is what would be required if a material recovery facility would want to landfill any material as opposed to recycling. So here in Minnesota, all recyclable material is still being recycled. And the other impact of this is there is the creation of a lot more domestic markets. And so as a result of the new policies coming out of China, we're going to be seeing a lot more new markets developing to respond to this material. So knowing that our current recycling contract was going to end and aware of the changes that were happening in the recycling industry, we went out for proposals to find out what would be the best option for Fridley and its residents. We received 5 responses, and based on the criteria that was outlined in the request for proposals, selected Republic Services, our current provider, as the recommended proposal. Their proposal breaks down their services into 2 costs: a collection cost, which is how much it costs them to go to your house and pick up the material, and a processing cost, which is how much it'll cost them to process that material at their material recovery facility. The collection cost starts at $2.50 and increases 3 to 3.5% per year, which is an industry standard. The processing cost is a formula that's based on the amount that they earn from the sale of recyclables, subtracted the processing cost and the cost of dispose of any residuals, which are those materials that end up at the recycling facility that shouldn't be there, such as plastic bags. In 2019, this processing cost would be 48 cents per household per month, making the total cost $2.98. This processing cost changes annually. However, there is an option for the city to exit if there's a dramatic fall in the cost or in the price of recyclables, or to find a different processing facility. If the processing cost goes down, we would see our overall rate with Republic Services go down to the point where it could become a credit that the city would receive. Residents will notice no obvious changes to the program. They will continue to be serviced on the same collection schedule, and they will have the option to upsize to a larger recycling cart at no charge or obtain an additional cart at no cost. If a resident has a one-time or infrequent large amount of cardboard, they can flatten and bundle this cardboard and place it next to their cart, and it will be collected by Republic Services for recycling. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions about the contract and ask that the council approve a resolution to sign the contract.
Thank you, Ms. Workin. It's interesting to note when you mentioned that currently 39% of items are recycled and you hope to achieve 60%. I gotta believe that I and a lot of other people are already doing that, because just by virtue of looking at the recycle cart and a garbage cart, my recycle cart is always overflowing within the 2 weeks. My garbage cart is mostly empty. So in fact, I'd get a smaller cart, but it's too much of a hassle to get the small garbage cart, so. But, so I think that over this last 7 years with this single sort has been a real boon for our community, and I would expect elsewhere it's the same story. So.
Mayor Lund, council members, yes, the single sort recycling has removed a lot of barriers that people previously faced with recycling and has had a dramatic effect on the impact of our numbers. The places where we're really seeing room to improve are with our multifamily properties. So the city does continue to increase outreach to people in apartments related to recycling. And that number also includes commercial properties. It's only recently that commercial properties were required to provide recycling, and that's based on the amount of trash that they generate. And so we are expecting that number to increase as more commercial properties begin recycling or improve their recycling programs.
The other thing I think that needs to be done, quite frankly, from my perspective of what I see out there, is people still need to have a better education or understanding what is recyclable and what should not be recycled. I mean, I think probably one of the biggest things is pizza boxes that they don't want because they're food contaminated, the oil's in them. And I think that there's a lot of plastics. My understanding of the plastics and what I do at my home is look at the bottom of a container, and if it's got that recycle arrow thing going around, a triangle with a number, like 1 through 7, those are all recyclable. So, and I see a lot of plastics still in garbage, and so I think there's a lot of commingling of what could be in trash and what should be in recycle and vice versa, so.
Mayor Lund, council members, that's a great point. I think it's always good to kind of take a look and remind yourself of the basics of recycling, the aluminum cans, the glass bottles, the plastic bottles, the paper, the cardboard, which are your really easy go-tos and are the big wins. The cost of disposing of trash that ends up in the recycling is a huge impact on the price that we end up paying for the service. And while it may seem counterintuitive, we do recommend that when in doubt, throw it out. If you're not sure if it's recyclable, it might be best to put it, and you can't find that answer, it might be best to put it in the trash. Here at the city, we are available. If residents do have a question, whether something's recyclable or not, they're more than welcome to call or email, and we will find that out for them.
And that goes hand in hand with why China is no longer accepting contaminated recycling items that are
Yes.
not as valuable as they once were, so it means we're doing a pretty good job, but, you know, when a whole ship has to turn around and go someplace else because China won't accept it anymore because people are commingling trash and things that don't belong in the recycle, so again, it comes down to that. Gotta hammer home that education.
Yep. Marilyn, that's a great point, that it's important to remember recycling is an environmental but also an economical activity. And so if there isn't that market, if it's too expensive, the market's going to respond accordingly. And there are many items, for example, plastic bags or styrofoam, in which they can't be recycled curbside, but there are options to recycle them at drop-off facilities.
Great, well, thanks for the information.
Mr. Mayor, last night on 60 Minutes, a whole section was incredible, I thought, related to, as I said here with my plastic bottle, about plastics and the contamination. They touched on some of those same things about China and why they're going to other places like Thailand and that type of thing. But it was amazing in the birds and stuff that they were noticing, even little small pieces of plastic that make, and then all the disgusting stuff floating in the ocean was kind of, ugh. So, how about organics? I mean, I think that's the other thing that maybe the mayor, I don't do organics, but I need to think about doing that. But some of the other things that are in our trash that we really could, including cardboard, pizza boxes, correct? Are they considered organic so they can be part of that collection?
Mayor Lund, Councilmember Bolcom, yes, pizza boxes would be considered an organic material. It's estimated that over 30% of our trash is organic material and could be recycled. The city has an organics recycling program also with Republic Services, which costs $10 a month. Residents can sign up online at fridleymn.gov/organics. Once you get started, it's a really easy to use program. If you've been doing traditional recycling, it's very easy to make the switch over to organics recycling as well. The city also provides the compostable bags that are needed to start the program, and we've heard a lot of really great feedback from residents who are trying to live a more lower waste lifestyle who have opted to start organics recycling as well.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments, questions? Okay, motion would be in order.
Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move a resolution to approve contract for recycling services, Allied Waste Services of North America, LLC, found on page 53.
Second?
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and those opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, we're supposed to.
And Ms. Workin, back to you. You got this other one on item number 13, or we, regulation approve payments to residents. Is that a separate item, 78?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lund, council members. The second item is related to our grant funding provided by Anoka County to support our recycling programs. This is a grant that we receive every year from the county. We're just receiving it a little earlier than usual this year. In previous years, we haven't received this contract until second quarter of the year. So it's great to know early on how much money we have to work with and support our programs. Anoka County has provided money from the state through the SCORE and LRDG programs. And then they distribute this money to cities based on population. The city of Fridley is allocated a certain amount of money based on a formula. This formula has stayed the same compared to previous years, except for the organics grant. Last year, we only received 50 cents per household. However, this year, we will be receiving $1 per household. The amounts have also gone up based on increases in our estimated population. So the total amount from these categories that we are being offered by Anoka County is $106,879. The city was also eligible for an additional $20,000, which we applied for and were offered, which would bring the total offered by Anoka County to $126,879, which is an increase of a little over $6,000 from 2018. In addition to our standard offerings of drop-off events, our curbside program, and education, we will use this additional funding to promote and incentivize the curbside organics program, as well as continue to enhance our drop-off programs. In 2019, we are going to continue to partner with Green Lights Recycling to offer 6 events. Our first event will be on January 12th at Green Lights Recycling from 9 to noon. We will have another event for every other month on the second Saturday following that. Residents should expect to see the first mailer regarding these in anticipation of the March event. And they can learn more information about these programs and the materials we accept at fridleymn.gov/dropoff. What we found by hosting our events at Greenlights is that we are able to serve more residents than when we hosted the events at our own facilities for a decreased cost. We did find that we collected a decreased amount of tonnage in 2018 as compared to 2017. However, this could be attributed to a variety of different factors. We've also found that by holding these events at Green Lights Recycling, we're able to significantly decrease the wait times of people who are attending these events. In 2018, all residents who went to Green Lights were in and out in under 15 minutes. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions related to this grant or our recycling programs and ask that council approve the 2019 agreement for the residential recycling program funding.
Thank you, Ms. Workin. Council have questions?
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Workin, so we had 6 events, but we really only had 43 more people come through. Is it because now people have just got rid of all their mattresses and those other things? I mean, you would think if you have more events, you would have more customers, right? Or is it just those people are spreading themselves out because they can't come in January, so they come in March? Or, what do you attribute it to? Because if there's less wait time, you would think they want to come. It's not that much further away. It's pretty easy to get to. It's amazing how quick you do get through there. Or you don't have to wait in line if that's all you have is shred it, like you did in the past. So what other kind of things do you think we'll do to encourage people to bring more of their stuff there? Or is it, are we just happy? We can be happy too, but
Mayor Lund, Councilmember Bolcom, those are great questions, and it was something that we were looking at as we had this this change in our program. One note about the numbers from 2017 is the May event also included people who were shredding paper, but perhaps not dropping off items, which could account for an increased than actual number. We also, from hearing from some residents, have heard concerns about driving the additional 5 miles to Green Lights Recycling. However, we believe that even with the increased drive time, the overall experience will be much quicker than when we had the events at our Public Works facility. Highway 65 moves very quickly on Saturday mornings.
and their cars aren't idling while they're in line,
Yes.
right?
Yep. People can also take advantage and drop off hazardous waste materials at Anoka County's Household Hazardous Waste Facility, which is nearby and accepts paint and other household chemicals at no cost. We believe that by continuing education related to those events, we'll be able to increase our numbers back to normal, back to usual. But we are thinking that residents are spreading themselves out more over the 6 events instead of having to wait for 3 events. In the past, when we only had events in April, July and October, you know, sometimes people are waiting 8 months to get rid of an item, and so we're seeing that people are dispersing more over the 6 events.
Is there anything else that we could accept or recycle that we're not? I mean, I know there's always some things that you send out in the little, or you can go look in the Anoka County one that's sent out. Is there any other products or things that we think we should be somehow recycling or?
Mayor Lund, Councilmember Bolcom, we're accepting the same items at these events that we have in previous events, with the exception of, and my historical knowledge of these is somewhat limited. We did accept wood pallets at one event in the past. However, there is a risk that if you get any treated wood, you have to dispose of all of that material as waste. And the city would not be able to use SCORE funds to do that. So accepting pallet wood is a somewhat risky offering. And residents are able to recycle pallets at Menards here in Fridley.
How about other wood products though?
Most treated wood products need to be disposed of through a specialized handling facility that accepts construction and demolition waste.
They burn them in their backyard and they're. Right.
That is not recommended.
I know, but I'm just saying. I'm not doing it. I don't have one. I don't even have a fire thing. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the motion would be in order.
Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move the 2019 Agreement for Residential Recycling Program found on pages 80 through 88.
Second?
Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Which leads us to informal status reports. Do the council or staff have anything to report to the audience? Mr. Hickok?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to announce that we do have a planning commission coming up this Wednesday. On that agenda, there will be an information item about the Girl Scout camp. The Metropolitan Council has hired a planner, and this is a very early discussion about the Girl Scout camp, but certainly something you may want to tune into. It's early in the discussion, so if you would be anticipating that they know exactly what they're going to do and how it's going to lay out and what they're going to ask of the city in terms of land use actions, way too early for that. And our guest tomorrow night is, or Wednesday night, is a planner who is very good at planning. We're very, very pleased knowing his expertise, that they've enlisted his services, and we look forward to a very open process and one that we will continue to encourage them to come back to planning commission meetings and ultimately to a city council meeting when action is required. But for those who have been interested, I know council members have gotten calls from time to time, what's happening? This is an attempt to really let people have an early glimpse of what's happening and to understand that though no certain answers are available yet, you'll be involved in the process and the communication as it unfolds. Thank you for that. That's what I had to report.
Mr. Hickok, is there actually was there anything sent out to the planning commission? Was there any presentation sent to them?
Just that there would be a guest
Okay.
to talk about this.
I was
And
just
that's
curious
how-
if there was material that as city council members we could read also.
Yeah,
but-
that's
okay.
how early it is in the process.
Okay.
And they really by design want you to know that they're bringing you in very early in the process so that as it unfolds, you know, so often the fear starts to build when you don't know what's going on and there's been too long a gap with what people are hearing. Their attempt in bringing this to you this early is to try and take away, to allay some of that fear so that you're not at home going, I haven't heard anything for a long time, something must be baking in the background. You're going to see it unfold. They're going to try and communicate as they know more about what they plan to do.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Weishaupt, do you think you can put it on the friendly Fridley site so that people that might be looking at that site would be aware of that action that's happening on Wednesday night?
Sure.
Just so they can, or if there's any,
Councilmember Balcom, we can put it on the city's website,
Yeah,
which I believe
right.
it is already, yes. Is
Okay.
that the one you're referring to? Because the Facebook site
Yeah.
that you're referring to is not ours.
that's right, it's not, I can put it on there, okay. good point. Do you have any idea when, I haven't seen the agenda, Scott, where is it on the agenda as far
It's
as?
in, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volkman, it's in the information items. It's not a regular action item, there's no action. So it, like tonight where we have the informal status,
Right,
when they get through their agenda, it's a fairly short agenda, when they get through that agenda, then they will get to this point of information, and the gentleman will speak and let folks know what they know so far.
okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other comments? Mr. Weisopel?
Your Honor, I just want to bring to your attention, to the public's attention, on the December 14th edition of the Fridley Focus, and the edition that goes to Columbia Heights, Fridley, Mounds View, and New Brighton. There is an ad on the second page of that edition that was paid for by the city employees. And that ad says, "Thank you, Fridley, for your contributions and support of the Fridley Civic Campus. We are humbled by your generosity to enhance our services by building a multi-use campus. As employees who use this facility every day, we wanted to purchase this advertisement so that we can say thank you to you all. We know we can never repay you for all these new facilities, but we will continue to show our appreciation by being friendly, responsive, and driven in all things big and small. This campus was built for you, and we encourage you to use it. If you have any questions about the facility or services, please call 763-571-3450 or visit fridleymn.gov. Sincerely, the Fridley City employees." And there's also a picture that was taken by David Bank Studios that did a part of that. But this ad was paid for by all of our city employees on a volunteer basis. And I just want to say to them that I'm very proud of them. They were asking what they can do to say thank you to the community. And I thought this was a very appropriate
Very, very
response.
good.
So.
Very nice. Well, it's great that they're showing their appreciation.
And then lastly, I just wanted to point out and say thank you to Jim and Dolores as well, from all the employees of the city of Fridley. You've treated us, the staff members, with respect. You kept an open mind on the challenging issues. You stuck it out, and you made the tough decisions, and you dealt with us on a civil basis. And we are just appreciative as all get out, because you've created a real way of doing business here at the council dais that the city staff appreciates. So thank you both.
Mr. Mayor, should be sent out on Wednesday. There will be a meeting related to the fire station number 3, which is in Ward 3. That will be a meeting on December 26th at 7 p.m. in the fireside room, right here, and at the Civic Campus. So it'll be coming out. There'll be more information, and I hope that anyone, I know it's a very busy time of the year, but do need to have that discussion, so we want people to come in here. It'll be the Director of Public Safety will be heading that meeting, so. Or feel free to either email me or call me, either one also.
If there's no other business,
Nothing further with the permission.
Whoa, come on, they need to do this.
No, they asked me.
Oh, they did?
did.
Oh, okay.
With the permission
Oh.
of Mr. Safety and Mrs. Vercheck, I would move that we adjourn.
And I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those
You could
opposed?
second too, Jim.
Oh, third, I'll third it.
The motion carries. Thank you for attending or watching your city council. Good evening, and Merry Christmas.